The crystal chandelier glittered overhead. Joyful laughter echoed through the millionaire's grand dining room until the maid came forward carrying dinner. One guest's expression shifted from pleasure to revulsion. "Hold on, is she the one who prepared this?" he said, his voice deliberately loud enough for all to hear. The entire room went still. A second voice pierced the air, even more cutting, "I refuse to eat anything she's handled." The young black maid's hands trembled as the silver tray clinked against the crystal glasses. Shame scorched through her until the sound of a chair pushing back rang out. Every head turned. The millionaire's daughter rose to her feet, her tone calm yet rebellious. "If what she's prepared isn't acceptable to you, then I'm not acceptable either." Amelia had become accustomed to going unnoticed. Working as the black maid in the Harrow estate, she drifted quietly through the hallways, dusting, waiting tables, scrubbing, always cautious not to attract excessive notice. The work wasn't prestigious, but it provided reliable income, and it enabled her to send financial support to her younger brother. "Amelia, bring the glasses, if you would," Mrs. Harrow would command, scarcely looking in her direction. Amelia would always respond gently, "Yes, ma'am." Yet despite her subdued compliance, she maintained her self-respect. She possessed a talent in cooking, an ability to transform even the most modest ingredients into something extraordinary. The household staff respected her, though the affluent guests seldom took notice. To them, she was merely part of the scenery. This particular evening, though, was unusual. The Harrows were holding their most significant dinner party of the year, an assembly of millionaires, elected officials, and influential figures. Amelia labored for hours creating the food, committed to ensuring every detail was flawless. Her spirit filled with satisfaction as the fragrance of her cooking permeated the space. Still, behind the gleaming silverware and brilliant chandeliers, a conflict was already forming, one Amelia sensed, though she couldn't yet comprehend it. What she hadn't realized was that before the evening concluded, she would no longer remain unseen. The dining room glowed with crystal and gold, yet beneath the splendor, Amelia sensed the pressure of gazes upon her. She had devoted hours to creating the meal, her grandmother's traditional recipes enhanced with care and devotion. Now, holding the first tray, she moved toward the lengthy mahogany table where the city's elite had assembled. The initial guest, a heavy-set man with a diamond brooch shining on his necktie, reclined in his seat, narrowing his eyes. "Wait a moment. Is she the one who made this?" His statement wasn't shouted, but it sliced through the atmosphere like breaking glass. Amelia stood paralyzed, the tray quivering in her grasp. "Yes, sir," she breathed. He laughed dismissively, shoving the dish aside with two fingertips as though it carried disease. "Then I won't be eating." A wave of chuckles and hushed comments spread. Another woman arched her eyebrow, her pearl necklace reflecting the light. "Really, Charles, I assumed the Harrows maintained higher standards. How could you permit the servants to prepare our meal?" Amelia's lungs constricted. She wished to vanish, to melt into the marble flooring. Her words stuck in her throat as the murmurs multiplied, more pointed, more vicious. At the table's head, Mr. Harrow coughed, his expression forced. "Please, let's not turn this into a—" But the heavy man cut him off. "With respect, William, some of us simply don't feel comfortable consuming food made by particular hands." His inflection made his meaning unmistakable. The quiet that descended was overwhelming. Amelia dropped her gaze, gripping the tray so firmly her knuckles turned pale. Each moment elongated, degrading her before countless strangers. From the distant end, a gentle metallic sound interrupted the silence. A utensil being set down. Amelia looked up. It was Clara, the Harrow's daughter, her young features hardened with something resolute. "Pardon me," Clara declared, her voice slicing cleanly through the whispers. "Am I understanding this correctly? You're declining to eat based on who prepared the meal." The man grinned, contemptuous. "Young lady, this isn't meant personally. We simply have our preferences." Clara bent forward, her gaze unwavering. "Interesting, because I have preferences as well, and one of them is refusing to sit in silence while someone degrades a person who labored more diligently than anyone in this room this evening." A collective gasp swept through the table. Mr. Harrow's facial muscles tensed. "Clara, this isn't—" But she remained standing. "No, father. If what she's cooked isn't worthy of them, then I'm not worthy either." She slid her dish away, the ceramic grinding harshly against the table surface. The guests fidgeted uncomfortably, their dominance suddenly questioned by a girl young enough to be their child. Amelia's heart raced, caught between terror and amazement. No one had ever championed her this way, especially not in such company. The portly man laughed, moving his head side to side. "You'll come to regret shaming your family in this manner." But Clara merely stood taller, her voice unwavering. "The only shame present here belongs to you." The atmosphere grew thick, pressure mounting like a cord ready to break. Amelia clutched the tray, caught between thankfulness and fear. She understood that influential men didn't accept humiliation gracefully, and she could sense it. Something was approaching that would transform everything. The room exploded. One guest struck his palm against the table, making the silverware rattle. "This is absolutely unacceptable. Are we truly being preached to by a youngster?" His complexion turned crimson as he gestured toward Amelia. "All on account of her." Amelia experienced every stare piercing into her, the burden of generations of prejudice weighing down. She yearned to become smaller, to disappear entirely, but her legs seemed anchored to the ground. Another guest scowled, his tone saturated with hostility. "You believe we traveled here to be attended to by someone like her? In my residence, she wouldn't even be permitted in the kitchen vicinity." Amelia's chest blazed, humiliation and fury intertwining. Her tray wobbled, glassware rattling as moisture gathered in her eyes. She crouched to gather them, but Clara's hand darted out, preventing her. "Don't," Clara commanded quietly but firmly. "You haven't done anything wrong." The stocky man rose to his feet, looming above them both. "William, manage your daughter. If she refuses to sit down, then maybe we ought to depart. Not one of us will consume this food." For an instant, the entire hall became suspended, utensils hovering, breathing paused. Mr. Harrow's expression grew dark as he glanced from the enraged guests to his shaking maid to his rebellious daughter. His mouth opened, but nothing emerged. And then Clara's voice sounded out, more powerful than the chandelier's radiance, more piercing than any weapon. "If you exit tonight on her account, then leave knowing you've exposed precisely who you are." Shocked reactions spread across the table. One woman released her napkin, her eyes shifting anxiously. The men stiffened, offended, their authority suddenly challenged. Amelia remained motionless, her pulse pounding so violently she believed the entire room could detect it. For the first time in her existence, someone wasn't embarrassed to position themselves beside her. They were prepared to advocate for her. But authority never yields without resistance, and the expression in the guests' eyes conveyed one message: this battle wasn't finished. The stillness that came next was more oppressive than granite. Gradually, the guests pulled their chairs backward, not from unity, but from wounded pride. They abandoned dishes uneaten, murmurs following them like vapor. For them, the occasion was destroyed. For Amelia, it was indelible. She remained immobile in the middle of the magnificent hall, her tray still shaking in her grasp. But this time, she had company. Clara rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder, her tone resolute. "Let them go. We're remaining." Amelia forced herself to swallow, her eyes shimmering. In that instant, years of being overlooked shattered. She was no longer simply the domestic help. She was a woman whose value had been defended, whose humanity had been acknowledged. And though the pain of degradation still remained, something else emerged too: optimism. The Harrow estate grew peaceful, but the reverberation of that evening would not diminish. Because what transpired at that table wasn't merely about a single dinner, a single maid, or a single privileged collection of millionaires. It served as a reflection exposing the bigotry and superiority that far too many continue to rationalize with pleasant facades. Amelia bore that evening within her, not as an injury, but as evidence that occasionally it requires just one voice, sufficiently brave, sufficiently bold, to break the quiet. Clara's resistance demonstrates something straightforward yet profound. Hatred flourishes in quiet, but it weakens when confronted with honesty. And so the inquiry persists. When cruelty takes a seat at the table, will we avert our gaze and permit it to consume, or will we, like Clara, possess the bravery to rise? If this narrative touched you, don't allow it to stop here. Distribute it, discuss it, and inform me in the comments. What action would you have taken if you'd been seated at that table?